Chapter 150. Bedside Visits 2? Doine's funeral was held so quietly that it was hard to believe it was the funeral for an elder who had lived to 120. Usually, for the funeral of such a distinguished figure like Doine's, it wouldn't have been strange even if all of the Lionheart's collateral branches, prominent foreign dignitaries, and even the Emperor of Kiel attended personally as mourners. However, Doine's had specifically mentioned in his will that he didn't want a grand funeral and opted for a simpler ceremony solely attended by those family members currently at the Black Lion Castle. Eugene was unable to attend the funeral because of his physical condition, but he was still able to lie down by the window and look down on the funeral procession. Everyone was wearing dark formal clothes as they walked down the flag-lined procession. Although it hadn't been a glorious death, the elders and all the Black Lions present still mourned the passing of the respected immortal White Lion, who had ruled the castle for decades. The captains of the Black Lion Knights carried the black coffin. Doine's was to be buried in the Black Lion's graveyard behind the castle. Although he wasn't able to participate in the procession, Eugene also gave his condolences to Doine's. Though he hadn't fully brought the situation down on himself in the end, Doine's had died because he hadn't raised his child. No, his grandson well. It seems that educating your children never goes quite as you desire. Eugene was looking out of the window with a swollen face but now muttered to himself as the funeral came to an end. I don't need any education, Mare suddenly spoke up from her preoccupation with slicing apples on the other side of the bed. She was working hard to reproduce the rabbit-shaped apple slices that Genos had carved for them. However, it wasn't going well. Despite her best efforts, the bodies of the rabbits that she made were crushed and lumpy, and their ears were blunt and thick. Mare really wanted to make a rabbit that was as sleek and smooth as the ones Genos had carved, but if you want to know why, it's because I'm so perfect that I don't need any education, Mare declared proudly. The base for my character is astounding as well. From childhood, Lady Sienna has always been bright and compassionate. I'm not sure about anything else, but it looks like you need education on how to peel apples, Eugene remarked. Lady Sienna probably isn't able to wield a dagger, or a fruit knife very skillfully either, Mare protested. I might be experienced in the theory of magic, but I'm new to this sort of petty work. However, I still don't need any education. I can learn just fine on my own. It seems that you're not aware of this, but Sienna was also pretty good at wielding a knife, Eugene revealed. At these words, the fruit knife fell from Mare's hands. Her eyes opened wide and she stared at Eugene like she had received a huge shock. Mare cried out wordlessly. Isn't it ridiculous to believe that a wizard can only swing a staff around? I'm not sure about a wizard whose only role is to stay in the back apart from casting spells, but the battlefield in our era was a real fucking mess. As he drew on his memories from 300 years ago, Eugene continued, Anise was quite good at cracking heads open with a mace, and Sienna used daggers that she could hide in her pockets. You're saying she gave up Akasha to use daggers instead? Mare asked in disbelief. You've had a good look at it, so you should already know why. Akasha's design is a bit poor if you want to use it as a weapon instead of a magic staff. What happens if you break the dragon heart due to a careless swing? Eugene reminded her. Though it wasn't like he had never suggested using Akasha as a weapon. If you're worried about the dragon heart breaking, you can just cast a reinforcement spell on it. Why are you making such a fuss about my decision to stab my opponents with my daggers instead of swinging my staff? No, fuck, you're just a wizard in the first place. You should just quietly stay behind the scenes casting your magic. Why do you need to come to the front and use a dagger instead of using magic? I'm fully capable of covering an opponent and stabbing him with my daggers, so don't. Hamel, are you actually worried about me? I'm not worried. I'm more confused. You're worried that I'm fighting on the front instead of staying on the rear where it's safe, aren't you? I mean, if you're a wizard, you should know your place and just stay squeezed into the back. Hee. Thanks for your concern. I mean, there's no need for it, but, you were concerned for me in particular, huh? Like you just said, I guess I should know my place. No, like I said, I'm not worried. Sienna did have her reasons for personally stabbing the enemy with a dagger. One of the oldest spells in use, Curse, wasn't just a black magic spell. It also had a generic magic variant. The conditions for casting the black magic version of Curse were simple compared to its power, but many conditions were required for the generic version of Curse to be cast properly. Amongst these conditions, the most important were the blood and flesh of the enemy. Whenever Sienna had swung her cursed dagger at the forefront of the party, It had weakened all the monsters in the battle. However, was there really a need for that? Eugene had asked himself the same questions several times during his previous life. Although they had seen quite a lot of benefits from Sienna's use of curse during battles with large groups of foes, wasn't it still much more effective to hit the enemy with a large-scale spell cast from the rear of the party than to come to the forefront and swing a dagger? From now on, stop coming forward. I will do what I want. If you're going to come out like that, at least go over and stay by Mullen's side instead of coming to me. Why do you keep playing around near me? PP playing around? You son of a bitch. You're being a burden, so just back off a little. Don't say something so foul, Hamel. Your words were a bit harsh. Why are you all taking Sienna's side? She's the one who keeps coming over to mess with me. That's because Sienna also wants to watch your back. It's because I want to put a dagger in your back, you bastard. Well, in any case, unlike what you might expect, Sienna was also pretty handy with a dagger, Eugene confirmed. I can be good at stabbing stuff with a dagger too, Mare insisted stubbornly. Narrowing her eyes, Mare held the fruit knife in a two-handed grip. Then she began stabbing into the empty air as if trying to show off her skills. Eugene didn't discourage her and just watched Mare stab into the air with her dagger with the feeling of watching a child in a talent show. He even gave her some advice: if you stab like that, the blade won't sink in. You need a bit more of an angle just like that and put some more weight into it. Just sitting there watching this was enough to make Eugene's body twitch in impatience. He had been lying in bed for 3 whole days. Since he couldn't even move his body because of the lingering pain, he couldn't help but be bored. Eugene was so bored that he even missed Christina, who had gone off to investigate the Holy Empire. She might not be as good as Anise, but she's pretty good at performing miracles. If Christina were here, wouldn't my body have gotten better immediately? While wistfully thinking such thoughts, he kept teaching Mare some dagger techniques. The door suddenly swung open without a knock. There weren't many people in this castle who would thoughtlessly barge into Eugene's room like this. Are you trying to pull some shit just because my body is currently in bad shape? Eugene asked as he gave a sideways scowl to Cyan, who was now standing in Eugene's doorway. You need to knock before you enter, you rotten bastard. As soon as I get better, I'll be sure to re-educate you in the rules of etiquette. We're brothers, so why? Cyan grumbled, even as he slowly stepped backward and closed the door behind him. Knock knock. Mare giggled and stopped playing with her dagger at the sound of Cyan knocking and reopening the door. Are you trying to raise your familiar as an assassin? Cyan asked with an uncertain expression as he turned to look at Mare. The way she held that dagger in her tiny hands. Cyan coughed and continued. It actually sounds like a pretty smart idea, but if possible, maybe you should reconsider it. I think my mother will dislike the idea. And I can't say I feel very comfortable about it either. Stop talking nonsense. How is your body? Eugene asked. It's fine, Cyan replied with a shrug. Although it's embarrassing, I must admit that the injuries I sustained during my battle weren't very serious. But what about your head? From what I can tell, there don't seem to be any problems. As he said this, Cyan walked into the room. Eugene turned to look at Garjith and Desra, who casually followed behind Cyan. And what are you two doing here? Eugene asked them. We've come here to give you our thanks, Garjith responded as he flexed his pectoral muscles. Even Desra, slouching next to Garjith, bowed her head deeply after a few moments of hesitation and said, If it weren't for you, we all could have died there, so. Since when did people start coming to give thanks empty-handed? Eugene asked with a petulant tilt of his head. He had only said this as a joke, but as if waiting for this signal, Garjith reached into a thick pocket and pulled out a potion. Garjith began to speak, Our family's revolutionary. Only for Eugene to cut him short. All right, fine. I'll save it for my later use, so just leave it on the desk somewhere. I haven't prepared anything special, but I won't forget this favor for the rest of my life. Desra spoke hesitantly, unsure what to do or say. Should she at least try to offer a cash reward? But just how much should she give for having saved her life? Was there any meaning in giving money to the main family, who were already rolling in so much cash that most of it was probably just rotting away? Or perhaps she could try to repay him with some other piece of valuable treasure. Oomph. While Desra was lost in her own thoughts, Cyan let out a snort. If you're done giving your thanks, why don't you head back out for a bit? I need to have a serious talk with my brother about this latest incident. Eugene, you need to follow the directions when you take the supplements. Garjith entreated before leaving. Don't get greedy and take them on your own. Make sure to call for my help. Eugene sighed. Like I said, I'll use them later. After Garjith and Desra had left, Cyan let out a long sigh and plopped down on the sofa near Eugene's bed. Your body really is fine, right? Cyan asked in concern. I said that it's fine. I should be all better after a few more days or so. Eugene replied with an indifferent expression as he openly stared at Cyan's face. This proud and self-centered brother of his seemed unable to fully resolve all the feelings lingering in his heart and could only reveal them through the pout on his lips. Eugene didn't have any intention to try and sympathize with the confusion and anxiety that Cyan must be feeling, but he still opened his mouth to offer at least some comfort. What's the matter? He asked. Cyan stayed silent. We're brothers, aren't we? It probably won't happen in my lifetime, but if I was ever disgracefully held captive like you were, wouldn't you do the same thing that I did and try to save me without going back and forth on whether you could or not? Eugene asked hypothetically. It wasn't disgraceful, Cyan spat out as his shoulders hunched in embarrassment. I was just careless. I was also in a lot of distress since Seal had just been captured by them. Of course that must have been the case, Eugene agreed half-heartedly. I didn't know that you would really be that crazy, Cyan argued. I was just trying to do my duty as the heir of the main family. I wanted to save Seal and punish Uid, who had fallen into insanity. But to think that Hector of all people would be collaborating with Uid. If I hadn't been flustered by Hector attacking me, I would have been able to save Seal without your help. Really? Eugene asked skeptically as the corners of his mouth curved up in a sly smile. Noticing that Eugene was looking right at him with such a blatant expression of disbelief, Cyan chewed on his lips in embarrassment before letting out a deep sigh. No, I couldn't have, Cyan admitted. On my own, I wouldn't have the means to save Seal and stop Uid. It's true that I was careless and distressed, but, in the end, that's all just an excuse. As long as you're aware of that, Eugene said, nodding his head in appreciation. It's not like you were crippled anyhow. You managed to survive safely. Then it's all fine. You just have to admit your mistakes and do better next time so that something like this doesn't happen. I know, Cyan accepted sulkily. Eugene warned him, from now on things will get very difficult for you. With as much of an impact as this incident has had on the main family, you have to do an even better job as the next patriarch. You get what I'm saying, right? You need to train harder and become stronger, or else do you want to end up getting beaten up wherever you go? As Cyan quietly listened to Eugene's speech, he couldn't help but feel a seed of doubt rising inside him. Eugene's words were valid and there was nothing to refute. But was this advice really something that should come out of the mouth of a brother who was around the same age as him? Cyan cursed. Bastard. I know you're right, but do you really need to talk to me like you're some old man? Eugene brushed off the insult. Isn't that just because my mind is much more mature than yours? Brother, could it be that your mental age is still stuck at when you were 13? Cyan didn't respond and just pouted his lips. He sat like that on the sofa for a few seconds, clasping and unclasping his hands, then he slowly raised his gaze to look up at Eugene. Hesitantly, Cyan proposed, since something like this happened, why don't you just become the patri? Are you looking for a beating? Eugene interrupted him with a growl. Ahem. All right, I've got it, so don't get angry. Cyan immediately backed down, his tail curling up between his legs as he avoided eye contact. I heard some news from the elders earlier. Father will be coming to the Black Lion Castle in 2 days at the very latest. The Red Tower Master and the White Tower Master will also be coming here at the same time, Cyan reported. But why? Eugene was about to question Cyan out of reflex, but he managed to swallow it back. It really wasn't difficult to infer their reasons for coming here. In order to understand the truth behind this situation more thoroughly, the Lionheart clan would need the help of these archwizards. Uid had died, and the magic circle he had drawn had been swept away during their fierce battle. However, Eugene was able to remember exactly what that magic circle looked like. He had only gotten a brief glance at it, but Akasha allowed Eugene to store all the magic circles he had ever seen inside his head. Eugene wasn't the only one who remembered it either. Mare had also memorized it. Besides that, there was also the Spirit of Darkness. The White Tower Master, Melkith Alhea, was the best spirit summoner of her time. Although she hadn't made any contracts with the Spirit of Darkness, there was no greater expert than Melkith when it came to spirits. In fact, the best thing would be to summon the Black Tower Master, but There was no way that the Black Lion Castle would welcome his presence. Since black magic had been involved in this incident, they would have no reason to want even more black wizards to get dragged into this. What about the Holy Empire? Eugene asked as he tilted his head in curiosity. With the Red Tower Master and White Tower Master, they would have more than enough experts in terms of magic and spirits, but in Eugene's opinion, they would also need the Holy Empire's help investigating the traces of black magic. We sent an invitation to Assistant Bishop Kirstina, but it appears that she was forced to reject it due to being too busy. Instead, an inquisitor will be visiting us. An inquisitor, huh? Eugene recalled the inquisitors that he had met 300 years ago. They were hunters who tracked down and erased every trace of black magic fanatics who had even more faith in their god than anyone else in the Holy Empire. These were a group of people who, while hunting black wizards, could be even crueler than the cruelest black wizard. They are quite the experts, Eugene admitted thoughtfully. They were not able to cast miracles as powerful as Christina's, but they were certainly of more use than Christina when it came to tracking down black magic. But why didn't Seal come with you? Eugene asked after belatedly realizing Seal's absence. He had seen the two of them standing together during the funeral procession earlier, but it was strange that Seal hadn't accompanied Sion when even Garjeth and Desra had chosen to visit. Well, I did tell her to come with me, Sion said, smacking his lips. But Seal said that she would come by herself later. But why? How should I know? Seal glared at her reflection in the mirror. She was wearing a dress uniform that was solid black from top to bottom. It was the prestigious uniform of the Black Lions, but she still felt stuffy seeing all the buttons on the dress shirt underneath done up neatly. The funeral was over. It didn't matter even if she did change clothes. However, she couldn't just change right away. She needed to firm her resolve. This would be her first time taking part in a bedside visit. That barbarically strong guy was currently confined to lying in bed, unable to lift even a finger. This is my first bedside visit, but it might also be my last, Seal reminded herself resolutely. Although most of Seal's wardrobe consisted of dress uniforms and training clothes, there were still a few other clothes she had never worn before. Most of these were clothes that she had received as birthday gifts. She had intended to wear them if she ever needed to go to a party, but wouldn't it be fine for her to wear one of these outfits to commemorate her first and potentially last bedside visit? Seal imagined a voice asking her, "Are you crazy?" Of course, that rude bastard might say such a thing as soon as he saw her in such a fancy outfit, but it didn't matter. In fact, Seal actually wanted to fluster Eugene by doing this and hopefully alleviate the currently gloomy atmosphere through an exchange of jokes. "All right," Seal said, having mustered her resolve. Then she began determinedly undoing the buttons on her dress uniform. After taking off her clothes, she walked over to her wardrobe and stood in front of it. Then she spent quite some time choosing what to wear. She needed something that wasn't too extravagant. Not like this dress, for example. Just why were its chest and back cut so low? Seal hesitated. If I wear this? After imagining a crumpled look on Eugene's face that made it appear like he had just taken a mouthful of shit, Seal snickered to herself. Although seeing such an expression on him would also be amusing, she didn't want to wear this crazy dress just to elicit such a reaction. I'll leave for later, Seal promised the dress. After making a quick mental note regarding the dress, Seal resumed tearing through her wardrobe. In the end, what Seal chose was a simple and neat dress that wasn't too fancy. Seal patted the wrinkles out of the skirt with her hand, then looked at her reflection in the mirror. It had been a long time since Seal last wore a skirt. After staring at her appearance for a few moments, her gaze shifted toward her uncovered collarbone. "That guy always goes around wearing that strange necklace, doesn't he?" Seal recalled. The necklace appeared ancient. As it seemed to have a story behind it, Seal had asked Eugene for the details several times ever since they were young, but Eugene had never once given her an answer. "What's with that necklace? Isn't it pretty?" "Well, it suits you. Would you like me to give you a necklace as well? One that's exactly the same as mine?" While imagining such an exchange of words inside her head, Seal rummaged through her accessories. She had received quite a few necklaces as presents, so she had to choose one that wasn't too extravagant and was something similar to Eugene's necklace. After selecting a necklace laced with a few small jewels, Seal hung it around her own neck. "Earrings and bracelets would be a bit too much, right? It's not like we're going to a party," Seal muttered to herself. The funeral may have been over, but she still shouldn't wear an overly colorful and flashy outfit. The dress Seal had chosen after struggling so much just now was also a black one-piece. Fine then, Seal murmured. She reached up and changed the shape of her hair a few times. Should she let the ends of her hair hang loose or perhaps tie it up? Maybe she should brush it over her shoulder? But the casual look would probably be better. After spraying on a gentle perfume, her preparations were complete. Seal left her room with a satisfied smile and headed over to the suite of rooms where Eugene was staying. Seal, what are you doing? I'll kill you if you say another word. Cyan had run into Seal on her way there and addressed her with surprise, only for Seal to silence him with a threat and immediately leave him behind as she headed up the stairs. But Seal silently stopped walking before she had even reached the end of the hallway. Genya was standing in front of the door to Eugene's room, sighing deeply as she cradled a large bouquet of flowers. Chapter 151. Bedside Visit 3. When she saw the bouquet in Genya's arms, Seal silently backtracked before quickly spinning around and barging into Cyan's nearby room. What the? Cyan, who had just returned to his room, cried out in surprise as he turned around to face the sudden intruder. Ignoring her brother's alarm, Seal just looked around his room with narrowed eyes. There it is, Seal thought to herself in delight as she reached her hand towards the flower vase resting on a table. Her older brother had a girlish side to him that really didn't suit his character, so even his room at the main estate was always decorated with flowers. What are you doing? Cyan asked, his jaw dropping as he saw Seal pull the flowers out of their vase. However, Seal didn't bother answering. After shaking the water off the flower stalks, she roughly tore off their roots and then resumed looking around the room. Cyan tried to get her attention. Hold on. But Seal just boldly threw open his closet. Seeing this, Cyan's eyes filled with anxiety and shook in panic. From a young age, Cyan would hide the things he couldn't allow others to see, like certain naughty books filled with his own specific kinks, underneath his bed or deep inside his closet. His voice wavering, Cyan called out, "That? Seal, just what in the world are you?" "Brother." Seal cut him off as her hands, which had been rummaging through his closet, dug into its depths to retrieve something. "Lend me this." The item that Seal had retrieved was an old-fashioned silk scarf that was part of a formal dress suit. It was a congratulatory gift for Cyan from one of the best fashion designers on the continent for becoming an adult. Unfortunately, after Cyan officially became an adult, he hadn't yet had the chance to leave Black Lion Castle, so he hadn't gotten around to wearing that suit and scarf set. "No. That's a bit," Cyan hesitated. "I don't want the clothes. I just want the scarf," Seal bargained. Cyan tried to explain, the clothes and the scarf together are a set. "If you keep arguing like this, I'm going to take out the books you've hidden at the bottom of your wardrobe and read them," Seal threatened. "After that, I'll also tell our mother about their contents and spread rumors around Black Lion Castle. Don't you know how old I am? I'm also an adult. Even mother can no longer scold me about such matters." "Yeah, I know that. She probably won't scold you. Instead, she'll just stare at you with a very, very complex look in her eyes, brother. And so will I." As if to demonstrate the said look, Seal turned her head and stared at Cyan. Cyan shuffled backward in the face of his sister's gaze, which was filled with something subtle yet complex, and was a swirling mix of many different emotions. If he refused her here, it was clear that this hateful little sister of his would look at him with these sorts of eyes for the next 10 years at the very least. Take it," Cyan gave in. "Thanks," Seal said with a wide smile as she nodded. "Ryup." Then right in front of Cyan's eyes, Seal tore the scarf into two. Cyan's jaw dropped open at his younger sister's merciless actions. Seal ripped the scarf a few more times and then gathered the flower stalks together. With one of the longer strips of silken cloth, she tied the flowers into a bouquet, then used the rest of the strips to cover the bouquet in ribbons. When all of this was done, Seal's hands were now holding a stylish bouquet made using the entirety of the high-class silk scarf. While admiring her dexterity and aesthetic sense, Seal scanned the creation from all angles. "You tore up the gift I received for my coming of age, just to make a bouquet?" Cyan confirmed in disbelief. "I'm taking this as well," Seal informed him as she took a large jeweled brooch from his accessory box. "This brooch doesn't suit you, brother," Cyan protested, "but I've never even worn it." "Your sense of aesthetics has been messed up since you were young," Seal critiqued. Where exactly were you going to go while wearing such a large bejeweled brooch? Unable to respond, Cyan could only stand there silently, his shoulders trembling. Seal placed the brooch in the center of the bouquet's ribbons as a decoration and then nodded with a look of satisfaction. Although it was much smaller than the bouquet Genya had been holding, hers couldn't compare in terms of sincerity and value that Seal had placed in this bouquet. Especially since I've made it personally. With a happy smile on her face, Seal left Cyan's room. Meanwhile, Genya was still hesitating in front of the door to Eugene's room. Her memory of what had happened was vague. The moment she was led into the depths of the forest by the demonic power, a wave of darkness had surged toward her from her rear. It had been a sudden surprise attack. She thought that she had reacted to it well, but she couldn't remember what had happened after a certain point. After regaining consciousness, she remained in bed for 2 whole days. During that time she had heard the entire story. Something about how Uod Lionheart, the eldest son of the main family, had gotten involved with a darkness spirit possessed by remnants of the demon kings. Since Genya wasn't interested in magic, she couldn't get a clear understanding of what had really happened. As such, she decided to just think of it in simple terms. The eldest son of the main family had gone crazy. Dominic, the captain of the Black Lion Knights 1st Division, had also gone crazy. And so had Hector. Phew. Genya released a heavy sigh as she looked down at the bouquet in his hands. Although it was hard for her to believe, she had no choice but to believe what had happened. After going insane, the 3 responsible for this incident had been killed. What was even harder for her to believe was that the one who had killed these 3 and saved the hostages was none other than Eugene Lionheart. No, was it really? Genya thought doubtfully. However, what reason could the Knights of the Black Lion have for lying about such a thing, even as they admitted to their own failures? Genya plaintively thought to herself, the one who saved me really wasn't my father? But he had plainly said that he hadn't. Genos felt deep gratitude that his much-esteemed Grandmaster Hamel had been reincarnated as Eugene and had saved his one and only daughter from this crisis. Also, he wanted his daughter to feel the same gratitude and reverence for their Grandmaster Hamel that he did. However, Genos couldn't reveal Eugene's true identity to his daughter. He hadn't received permission to inform her. The fact that Eugene was Hamel was a secret that Genos needed to keep for the rest of his life. But Genos really wanted to tell her. His lips itched with the urge to say it. Genya also shared his respect for Hamel, so he wanted them to show their respects to their master with a sincere heart together, once his daughter knew the whole truth. That was why Genya was here. The bouquet had been placed in her hands by Genos. He had pushed her in the back and told her to come here and thank her lifesaver. But Genya didn't know about her father's thoughts. Her mood was currently dampened due to a mix of various different factors. Hector, her close friend and rival since childhood, had betrayed the Lionheart clan. Then he had just died. So, could Eugene be said to have gotten revenge on Hector for her? Although she didn't think that things really went that far. Genya still had a hard time accepting Eugene. It wasn't like Genya couldn't recognize his skill, but she felt jealous of how much appreciation her father seemed to show Eugene. A voice suddenly called out to her, "Is it okay if I head in first?" Strolling over, Seal now stood beside Genya. Genya had been engrossed in worrying about what kind of expression she should show Eugene and how she should express her gratitude. Seal's sudden arrival startled her, and she turned to look at the unexpected intruder. "Unless you plan on going in now, that is," Seal said with a smile as she tossed her hair back in an elegant gesture. As she did so, Seal carefully examined both Genya's appearance and the bouquets. So it was a misunderstanding, realized Seal. Having come here all by herself with a bouquet of flowers at that, Seal had felt the need to check if Genya might be harboring certain indecent intentions. But seeing the blatant reluctance all over Genya's face, it seemed clear that Genos had pushed her into doing this. "It looks like you feel uncomfortable heading in on your own," Seal observed as she placed her hand on the doorknob with a soft smile. "If that's the case, let's head in together. I was also feeling a bit embarrassed to go in by myself." Is that so?" Genya said, her expression relaxing as she felt sincere gratitude towards Seal's proposal. Seal had done several calculations before making this offer. Genya was 27 years old while Seal was 20. Although Genya wasn't that old, a 7-year age gap was still pretty large. As for appearances, well, I'm still better, Seal thought smugly. Seal's appearance had been praised ever since her childhood. Seal knew all too well that she was seen as sweet, cute and pretty. She's wearing such a drab outfit. And as for me, it looks like I made a good decision to get changed before coming here. When we enter together, there'll be an obvious difference between the two of us. She had even sprayed on some perfume and put on a necklace. Seal turned the doorknob with a wide smile. I won. The moment the door opened, Mare, who had been sitting on the sofa, leaped up with a cheer. With a triumphant expression, she approached Eugene, who was still lying in bed, and reached her hands out toward him. You were already standing out there for quite a while. If you were going to enter, couldn't you have at least waited one more minute before coming in? Eugene complained, his face twisting into a fierce scowl, and he glared at Seal and Genya. I lost the bet because you came in too early. Didn't I say so? Mare bragged. I said she was slowly getting ready to come in, but Sir Eugene, you insisted that she would come in a bit later. So that means I won. In other words, Sir Eugene, you lost. You know what that means, right? Just do it quickly, Eugene said resignedly. Please admit your defeat. Fine, I lost. Now just do it quickly. Hearing this retort, Mare snickered. Then she pulled one of Eugene's limp wrists out from beneath his blanket and rolled up his sleeve. I won't take it easy on you, Mare warned. Eugene snorted. Who asked you to? I know that your body is in pain, but a bet is a bet. Mare insisted. Fufu. After Mare brought her index and middle finger together, she blew on them to warm them up, then mercilessly delivered a slap to Eugene's wrist. Snap. The slap landed with a sharp noise. Normally, the attack wouldn't even have stung him, but in Eugene's current state, this blow penetrated deep into his bones and even shook his soul. Karg. Eugene clenched his teeth as he choked back a scream. However, this violent reaction only startled Mare more. Her shoulders shook as she scanned Eugene's expression. Are you okay? Mare asked timidly. Eugene squeezed out, It's nothing. You really mean that, right? You aren't going to get mad at me for this later? I said it's nothing. Let's pinky promise, Mare insisted. Having forced Eugene to make such a promise, Mare returned to her seat with a smile. Enduring the pain in his wrists that had yet to fade, Eugene lifted his head. What in the world were they doing? Seal had imagined having a conversation with Eugene several times, but she hadn't expected to be met with such a comedic situation as soon as they entered his room. Ahem, Genya coughed as she presented the bouquet she was holding in her arms to Eugene. I've come here to give you my thanks. I thought so, Eugene said with a nod. This bouquet carries not just my gratitude but my father's as well, Genya added. As Eugene recalled the sight of Genos with tears flowing from his eyes, he felt a bit embarrassed. I'll gratefully accept this, he said politely. Seal butted into the conversation. Take mine as well. Then, as if she had been waiting for this, Seal pushed her bouquet onto him. She presented it at an angle where the ribbons and the jeweled brooch could be seen clearly from the front. Pretty, isn't it? I even made this bouquet myself, Seal bragged. What's with this jewel? Eugene asked. It's a brooch. It's meant to decorate your chest. Would you like to try it on? Maybe later. As Eugene responded, he glanced at Seal's attire. And what's with your clothes? Eugene asked. Seal questioned wordlessly. And what's with that necklace? Since when did you go around wearing necklaces? Eugene demanded. Seal had been prepared for such a question. Isn't it pretty? Seal asked with a slight tilt of her head. By doing so, Seal emphasized the curve from her neck to her shoulders, even as the corners of her mouth curled up in a mischievous smile. Nope, Eugene said with a shake of his head. What? Came Seal's indignant response after a short delay. It doesn't really suit you, Eugene declared. How could he say such a rude thing right to a person's face? Instead of such a shiny necklace, I think a different necklace would suit you better, Eugene elaborated. Surprise colored Seal's reaction. Ah. Really? Your clothes are certainly pretty, Eugene complimented. This feels like the first time I've seen you dress up like this. Is that right? Seal said shyly. Her heart was shaken by this unexpected turn in the conversation. Seal smiled softly and brushed her hair back in an elegant gesture. Do you remember what you said? You told me to save my thanks for later when I was all better, and you'd be expecting sincere thanks from me? Seal reminded him. Then, so that he could get a good look at her, Seal spun around on the spot. The subtle perfume she had sprayed on her body was dispersed through the air by her spin and carried over to Eugene. So thank you for saving me, Seal said gratefully as she slightly raised the hem of her skirt and bent both her waist and knees. Without bowing her head down completely, Seal stared at Eugene with a playful look in her eyes. So, this favor for having saved my life, how exactly should I go about repaying it? Seal asked suggestively. Instead of answering her question, Eugene commented with a frown, but it feels like your thanks isn't all that sincere? Seal was left speechless. Your knees should be bent a bit more, and your head should be bowed down fully. Wouldn't that be a more sincere thanks? Like I've always said, for a younger brother, you really are cheeky towards your older sister. Seal's expression contorted into a scowl as she stood back up. Then she flounced over and plopped down next to Eugene. Then how about this? While your body is recovering, I'll come over to nurse you daily, Seal offered. I can take care of nursing him. Mare lifted her head and interjected, only for Seal to snort and wave a finger at her chidingly. How can you be a nurse when you can't even peel a single fruit properly? Seal retorted. Being able to peel a fruit isn't important when it comes to nursing, Mare protested. Seal sniffed. Then what do you think is important? You need to change Sir Eugene's bandages, wipe the sweat off his body, change his clothes, change his underwear, massage his muscles so that they don't stiffen, and help him with his poo and pee, Mare listed diligently. Seal's lips parted slightly in shock. She turned to look at Eugene in disbelief, even as Eugene turned to look at Mare with the exact same expression. Are you crazy? Eugene scolded her. But isn't that what a nurse does? Mare argued back. When did I ever ask you to help me with my poo and pee? I'm prepared to do so at any time. I don't need it. Eugene roared. Now that I think about it, it's quite strange. You've been spending the last 2 days convalescing in bed, but why haven't you gone to the toilet even once? You haven't sweated either, Mare pointed out as she blinked and tilted her head to the side. His poo and pee, Genya, who had been listening quietly, suddenly murmured. She glanced at Eugene with an uncomfortable expression and admitted, I never thought that such words would grace the lips of the people from the main family. Haven't I already resolved this misunderstanding? Eugene sighed in exasperation. I have never asked someone to help me poo and pee, and I have never asked them to help me change my clothes either. Then could you be wearing a diaper? Genya said with disgust as she took a step back, unconsciously glancing down at Eugene's lower body. Of course, his lower body was covered by a blanket, so nothing could be seen. Exasperated, Eugene confessed, I'm dealing with all that by using magic. I'm also using magic to clean myself, so that's why I don't need to change my clothes. Are you satisfied now? Even if that's the case, I'm still ready whenever, Mare chimed in. Turn it down a bit, Eugene scoffed as he rolled his eyes at Mare for that unnecessary comment. Then he turned to glance at Seal and Genya, who were still staring at him, to warn them, don't have any strange ideas. I'm not thinking of anything strange, Seal said as she leaned back and shook her head. It's just, well, I'm fine with changing your bandages, but anything more than that is a bit too much. That goes for me as well, Genya agreed. When did I ever ask you to? Stop bothering a sick patient and just leave, Eugene shot back with a scowl as he gestured to the door with his chin. At this gesture, the wind responded to Eugene's will and popped open the closed door. It hasn't been that long since we arrived and you're already asking us to leave? Seal complained. The patient's comfort is paramount, Eugene stated. You're saying that being with me isn't comfortable? Why ask something so obvious? Why not? Is it a psychological reason? Does my being in the same room as you while dressed up like this stimulate you psychologically? Seal asked with excitement. It isn't your clothes that are stimulating. It's the nonsense that you keep spouting. And do you know what type of stimulation I'm feeling? Rage. So if you don't like it, then just get lost. Eugene let out a roar. At this outburst, Seal just stuck her tongue out at him and stepped back slightly. However, Genya didn't allow herself to retreat. After hesitating for a few more moments, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a necklace with a whistle hanging on it. If you need any help, please blow this whistle, Genya said as she hung the necklace around Eugene's neck. Since he wasn't able to properly move his body, it was impossible for him to resist. Eugene glared at the whistle hanging from his neck, then summoned a breeze to lift the whistle to his mouth. Peep. Seeing Eugene blow this whistle right in front of her, Genya blinked in confusion. Spitting out the whistle, Eugene continued speaking. Take Seal and leave this room immediately. Don't you think you're being a bit too rude? Seal chided. You're the one who came here for a bedside visit only to make my blood pressure explode. Eugene roared once more. Seeing how loud your voice is, it seems that we don't need to worry about you, Seal said with a wide smile as she grabbed Genya by the sleeve and pulled her along. Well then, let's head out now and stop disturbing him, big sis. Big sis? Genya repeated in surprise. You're 7 years older than me after all. Could I be making you uncomfortable by calling you big sis? Seal asked tentatively. What should she say? There didn't seem to be any hidden meanings behind Seal's words, and it wasn't unusual to be called that considering their family situation, but Genya still felt subtle displeasure. Of course, she wouldn't take her annoyance out on this young lady of the main family just because of a speck of resentment. Not at all, Genya eventually allowed. Turning to Eugene, Seal instructed, rest well. Call me if you're bored or need any help. Also, about going to the toilet if at all possible, you shouldn't hold it and just go to the bathroom even if you do need assistance. Eugene's only response was, get lost. Seal left the room after showing him a final cheeky smile. While Eugene was still panting in anger, Mare took the bouquets that Eugene had received and moved the flowers into a flower vase. Still, it looks like everyone is worried about you, Sir Eugene, and grateful as well, Mare commented happily. I saved them all, so it's only natural for them to feel that way, Eugene said complacently. Doesn't that make you feel proud or rewarded? Just like it's natural for them to feel that way, I only did what I was supposed to have done, so why should I feel proud or rewarded? Eugene had responded to her question without much thought, but Mare still smiled widely at this answer. You are a good person, Mare stated confidently. Did you think I was a bad person? Eugene just asked sarcastically. What I mean is, you're a much better person than I imagined when reading the fairy tale, Mare explained. Eugene just turned to look out the window without saying a word in response to that. Mare sat next to Eugene and resumed peeling the apples while humming a song. Those apples sure are pitiful, Eugene eventually muttered. Huh. Mare grunted in confusion. I didn't say anything, Eugene denied it. The apple peels were falling off in uneven shreds. 1. For those confused, it's a thing in Asian culture where bored people can engage in penalty games, also known in Japanese as batsu games. Basically, you make a bet or play a game such as rock, paper, scissors, and the winner gets to penalize the loser, usually something that's painful but not harmful like a flick to the forehead or, in this case, a two-finger slap on the wrist. Chapter 152. The Inquisition 1. After 2 more days passed, Eugene finally got out of bed. Although he hadn't completely recovered, after 5 whole days of complete bed rest, his body had now recovered enough that he was able to move haltingly. Don't you need me to give you some support? Mare approached him with this offer. But Eugene just shook his head and said, don't need it. Standing in front of a mirror, Eugene dried his damp hair. How does it feel to have a shower after 5 days? Mare asked. Eugene just shrugged. It feels about the same as ever? After all, oil has been accumulating in your hair for 5 days, Mare pointed out. Eugene denied this with a frown. But it hasn't? Don't you know I've been taking care of that every day by using magic? Then why did you even need to take a shower? Because I wanted to. Yes, Mare conceded with a giggle as she dragged a chair behind Eugene's back. Then Mare stood on the chair and began combing Eugene's hair. His hair, which had been wet just a few moments before, had already been dried by a warm wind blowing over it. It doesn't really need to be combed, Eugene grumbled. I'm doing this because I'm bored, Mare explained. Also, do you really think that it's unneeded? You seem to think that unkempt hair suits you better, but I believe you would look much better with neatly combed hair. Know why that is? It's because I have a handsome face, Eugene bragged. You're so shameless, Mare muttered. While Mare was combing his hair, Eugene adjusted his outfit. He was wearing the black formal dress uniform of the Lionheart clan. It was neat without any creases, but Eugene still felt the need to fiddle with his outfit by undoing a button and then refastening it. What about your cloak? Mare asked. There shouldn't be an issue with wearing it, Eugene replied. With a soft smile, Mare wrapped the cloak of darkness around Eugene's shoulders. After she was done, Eugene looked back up into the mirror, only to find that for some reason he didn't really like the look of his cleanly combed hair. So he casually ruffled it with his hand. Why would you do something like that? Mare exclaimed, her cheeks puffing up with displeasure. However, she didn't stubbornly insist on any more combing and immediately slipped into the cloak when Eugene held it open for her. Don't come out today unless I call you, instructed Eugene. Just what do you think of me? Mare said with a pout. I'm not tactless enough to cause you any trouble, Sir Eugene. At the warp gate of the Black Lion Castle, there were so few people around that it felt strange. This was because the welcoming of today's visitors wasn't something to be proud of. The ones waiting at the warp gate along with Eugene were Genos, who had arrived soon after Eugene, and Seal, who had spent the most time unconscious from among the sacrifices. There was also Klein, who had been newly appointed to the seat of the head of the council. Furthermore, the only one in charge of personally manning the warp gate was the captain of the 6th Division, Dyard. The guests from Aroth will be the first to arrive, Dyard informed them. After checking the time, Dyard raised his staff. Puff. The warp gate shone as the connection was established. Shortly afterward, the warp gate began to ripple. The first to walk out was Lovelian, wearing a black robe. Rather than Eugene, who was the first to meet his eyes, Lovelian approached Klein, the new head of the council, and extended a hand to the man. It's been a long time since we last met, Lovelian said in greeting. It would have been better if we could have reunited for a more pleasant affair, Klein said with a wry smile as he shook Lovelian's hand. Melkith, who had followed Lovelian through the warp gate, was wearing a surprisingly ordinary outfit today. She had on a glossy black mink coat. However, she did have leather boots that were so high that they went up to her knees and made a creaking noise with each step she took. Hi, Melkith called out. A funeral had been held just a few days ago, and with how serious the recent incident had been, the atmosphere of the castle was sunk into depression. But Melkith didn't care about any of that. After glancing around at her surroundings, she spotted Eugene and waved at him with a wide smile. Melkith first addressed Seal. It's been a while since we last met, hasn't it, young lady? Do you remember me? Yes, of course, Seal reluctantly admitted. So where's that captain who doesn't know how to act her age? I'm talking about the woman who kept checking the time on her pocket watch even though she was wearing a wristwatch, Melkith elaborated. Captain Carmen is currently stationed at the main estate. Seal eventually felt pressured to reveal the truth by the cheerfully smiling Melkith, even though she really wanted to say, who are you to accuse someone of being unable to act their own age? This is my first time visiting Black Lion Castle. Is it okay if I take a little look around? Melkith requested. Why don't we save that for later? Klein interjected. The Patriarch should also be arriving soon. Well, he has it tough enough already. I'll make sure to keep a hold of my facial expressions, Melkith promised. But why did she have to stick to that guy like it was only natural for her to do so? Seal furrowed her brows as she glanced at Eugene and Melkith. Was it something similar to maternal affection? Indeed, that was certainly a possibility. Eugene couldn't know what a mother's love felt like. So it might be that he was getting friendly with this woman who had a mature figure, a good amount of years, and was full of motherly affection. Although rather than a mother, isn't she more like a grandmother? Seal rudely speculated. Although she had the beautiful appearance of a 20-year-old. Seal didn't allow herself to finish that thought. The moment she began to consider Melkith from that aspect, Seal felt like she was about to have some rude thoughts about her own direct superior, Carmen Lionheart. As the captain of the 3rd Division, a woman, while strong and beautiful, she left others with no choice but to respect her. Connection has been established with Uras, Dyard reported. At these words, Melkith leaned closer to Eugene and whispered, So I've heard that an Inquisitor is coming? Have you ever met one before? I haven't, Eugene replied. Let me just say, while I hate the Holy Empire, I hate Inquisitors even more. Do you know why? Melkith asked. Eugene nodded and said, I do. It's said that in the distant past, the Holy Empire judged spirit worship to be a type of heresy and persecuted spirit summoners, right? Melkith gasped, Oh my, you're quite knowledgeable, aren't you? It seems that you also did a lot of study about the history of wizards. But wasn't that all a really long time ago? Eugene pointed out. Well, that might be the case, but even now they might still be secretly persecuting spirit summoners, no? As she said this, Melkith's eyes were filled with a cheerful playfulness. While staring directly into her eyes, Eugene snorted and muttered, You're like a grandmother who enjoys frightening children by telling them scary stories. What did you say? I can't hear you very well, Melkith lied. While Melkith covered her ears and made an sound to drown out any objections, the warp gate began to shine. 2 people walked out of the warp gate. Both wore robes as red as blood, and beneath those, They were wearing the jet black uniform that all priests of the god of light wore, with black shakos on their heads. The man in the lead introduced himself. My name is Atarax and I am a member of the Malfakarum. And this is Himoria, my disciple. Atarax was a man with long blonde hair, but the woman, Himoria, had shorter hair than Atarax and had covered her mouth with a black metal mask. With her straight, bobbed hair that seemed to have been cut with a knife framing her face, Himoria scanned her surroundings. Although Himoria kept her silence apart from a short grunt in greeting, Atarax spoke up as if speaking in her place. Isn't the Patriarch here yet? Klein assured him, he'll be arriving soon. We've just managed to connect to Kiel. Eugene blatantly stared at both Atarax and Himoria. The Malfakarum, that violent and ruthless branch of the Inquisition, had also been around 300 years ago. To be honest, Eugene didn't harbor any misgivings toward them. What about their ruthlessness towards black wizards and demon folk? That was precisely what Hamel had been like in Eugene's previous life as well. In the chaotic world of 300 years ago, the Malfakarum was also one of Hamel's allies. But aren't they too old-fashioned an organization for the current era? This was a world where you could no longer hunt black wizards indiscriminately or show open hostility towards the demon folk. So for this branch of the Inquisition, which existed for the sole purpose of doing so, to still be in existence, Eugene couldn't help but feel surprised. The warp gate rippled. Eugene straightened his back as he stared at the warp gate. Shortly afterward, the patriarch of the Lionheart clan, Gilead, passed through the warp gate. The impression Eugene got from the current Gilead was markedly different from Gilead that Eugene had met just a few months ago. The patriarch had deeply sunken cheeks and dark circles beneath his eyes. His beard was still neatly trimmed, but Eugene could see the cuts that had been left on Gilead's cheeks and chin. For such a skilled warrior to allow himself to be cut by a razor, Eugene thought regretfully. His whole frame seemed to have shrunk over the past few months. It seemed that Gilead's mental state had been shattered by Euid's latest incident. Patriarch, Klein let out a sigh and approached him with this greeting. Only for Gilead to immediately fall onto his knees and say, I am so sorry. Klein was startled by this sight and quickly pulled Gilead up to his feet. Hey now, you shouldn't show such a pitiful appearance, Klein chided him. Do I really have any choice but to do so? All of this happened because of my own ineptitude. This crisis. I don't know how to even begin to take responsibility for this. Gilead trailed off guiltily. Let's discuss all that later. For now, stand up straight. Your children are watching, remember, Klein reminded him. Letting out a deep sigh, Klein patted Gilead on the shoulder. At this reminder, the light belatedly returned to Gilead's darkly overshadowed eyes. He turned to look at Seal and Eugene. Normally, she would have greeted her father with her smile, but the current Seal couldn't bring herself to do so. She quickly bowed her head towards Gilead while holding back the urge to burst into tears. Ha! Gilead released a relieved sigh as he approached Eugene and Seal. He pulled them into a tight hug and bowed his head over them. I heard the full story. It's such a relief that you're all okay, Gilead murmured softly. Father, Seal whispered as she buried her face into her father's chest and cried a little. Instead of letting out any tears, Eugene glanced at the arm that Gilead had wrapped around his shoulders. He hadn't been mistaken when he got the feeling that Gilead's whole body seemed to have gotten smaller. Gilead's arms truly were thinner than they had been just a few months ago. It had only been 5 days since Euid's incident had been dealt with, but it seemed that the distress Gilead had felt during these few days was enough to leave his cheeks sunken in and his arm muscles withered away. Thank you, Eugene, Gilead addressed him gratefully. I only did what I should have done, Eugene responded evasively. If it weren't for you, then it would have been too late to do anything. I was just lucky. It wasn't just my strength either. As he said this, Eugene glanced at the 2 inquisitors from the Malfakarum, Atarax and Himoria. They were blatantly staring at Eugene's bare waist. The holy sword is in safe hands, Eugene eventually assured them. That's a relief, Atarax said with a smile as he put the shako he had taken off in greeting back on top of his head. Well then, please lead the way. We need to see the place where that devil Euid Lionheart performed his forbidden, depraved and almost calamitous ritual. That devil. Gilead's eyes shook at these words. However, he wasn't in a position to show any reaction to this accusation. Gilead just let out a short sigh and released Eugene and Seal from his embrace. Please follow me, Genos suddenly spoke up. Genos didn't trust the Malfakarum as a whole. But even amongst them, Adarix's name was especially famous for having a dirty reputation attached to it, of which Genos was well aware. For the church to send the Punisher Adarix and guillotine Hemoria, Genos thoughtfully considered. Although he had known that someone of high status would be sent due to the significance of this incident, to think that they would really send the Punisher. And his disciple Hemoria was just as high-ranking as Adarix was. What about the survivors? Adarix brought up. They are all safe, Genos reported. You mean that they didn't suffer from any mental pollution? Fortunately, that was the case. Pollution can quickly spread from even the smallest grain. After inspecting the site of the ritual, we will interview each of the survivors individually, Adarix declared. You know, your tone doesn't sound like someone who's asking for permission, Genos pointed out aggressively. It needs to be done. You don't want any more of your clan to fall to corruption, do you? Adarix responded. Klein's expression stiffened at Adarix's words. He glared at Adarix with an uncharacteristic hostility in his eyes. Hemoria reacted to this gaze by placing her fingers on the mask that covered her mouth and glaring back at Klein. We are not here to sympathize with the Lionheart clan's unfortunate incident, nor are we here to assist in discovering the truth, Adarix said as he raised a hand and grabbed Hemoria's shoulder. This incident is an unprecedented and bizarre case of the remnants of the Demon Kings, who were subjugated 300 years ago, returning to cause chaos. In the current Malfakarum, we may not be allowed to hunt black wizards or demon folk. But, should we discover the breaking of any taboos, particularly the committing of any crimes that involve the use of humans, the Malfakarum will not hesitate to hunt the perpetrators, no matter who they may be. Therefore, Klein prompted. We are here to do what needs to be done, Adarix stated with determination. As such, we will not ask for permission. Council head, we understand that you might want to cover up your clan's embarrassment, but what if any seeds of the devil were to remain in the heads of the sacrifices? What if this leads to them falling into madness and one day performing the same demonic ritual that you did? All right, I see the necessity, Klein reluctantly admitted as he sighed and shook his head. However, allow me to correct just one thing. I have no intention of covering up our clan's embarrassment. Because if we blindly attempt to conceal it, all we will do is cause ourselves to rot from within. However, what I was concerned about is that your methods of interviewing the sacrifices might be too harsh. Our interviews will be gentle and polite, Adarix promised. In that case, you won't mind me watching, Klein requested. Adarix conceded, yes, please watch as you like. They headed into the depths of the forest. Finding the place where the ritual had been performed wasn't difficult as several black lions were guarding the forest so no demonic beasts could damage the site. Melkith hummed thoughtfully. For this entire time since they had entered the forest, Melkith had stayed focused without saying a word. She stopped walking for a few moments, then bent down and touched the soil with her hands. Melkith hummed again, her eyes narrowing. The soil she swept her hands over trembled, and clay people the size of a finger climbed out of the ground. Indeed, it does seem like there truly was a spirit of darkness. This is quite unusual, Melkith muttered as she patted the clay people on the head with a finger. The spirits of this land aren't really in harmony with the soil here. They were pushed over from a different patch of land to this one. And over there. The number of primal spirits is lower than it should be. Melkith scooped up a heap of soil with her hands. Then she spread her fingers and let the soil trickle down like grains of sand. Perhaps once this season passes, there won't even be a blade of grass left in that area? It's quite curious. This is, rather than the land being dead. That's right, so that's the case. It seems like the primal spirits of the land were actually transformed into spirits of darkness. Melkith hypothesized. Is something like that even possible? Eugene asked her. For me, of course it's impossible. I don't have any contracts with the spirits of darkness, nor do I want to make a contract with them. Even so, it's not like I need to know the spirits of darkness firsthand, no? No spirit can interfere with or obstruct other spirits of completely different elements. Even if they're a spirit king, Melkith said with a chuckle as she straightened up. So a normal spirit of darkness shouldn't have the power to forcibly assimilate the primal spirits of another element. On top of that, didn't you say that it was able to block the eyes and ears of the prestigious Knights of the Black Lion? That's impossible. That's because it wasn't just any ordinary spirit, Eugene explained. Yep, that's why it's so curious. How intriguing, Malkuth said with excitement. The remnants of the demon kings who were defeated hundreds of years ago lingered on in their weapons. That much I can understand. However, for these remnants to then become spirits? There are already several papers written on the close relationship between mana and spirits. But for a demon king to become a spirit it could also mean that spirit worship truly is a type of heresy, Atarax muttered. You're still spouting such nonsense, Malkuth said with a snort as she raised her hands. The clay people crawled back into the soil, causing the ground to tremble and rise. It was the wave of dirt that Malkuth had shown them back in the Lionheart clan's forest. For someone like you who spouts such bullshit, you don't deserve to ride this amazing dirt wave of mine, Malkuth declared proudly. Instead of doing something so embarrassing, let's just go already, Lovelian scolded her. This is it, Eugene said as they arrived at the site where the ritual had taken place. Over there. That's where the ritual was held. Maybe there are a few traces of it left? A magic circle was drawn all over the ground. Parts of it were also painted in the air, but those have disappeared. He was met with silence as the others examined the site. Also, there was a black tree over there. I don't know if it really should be called a tree, but well, it at least looked like one. The sacrifices were hung from branches that were wriggling like tentacles. And everything was swallowed up by a dark gloom, Eugene said as he glanced at Seal. Since I wasn't captured as a sacrifice, if you want to know how it felt, you'll want to ask Seal instead of myself. She was able to keep partly conscious even in that situation. Really now this is, Lovelian muttered quietly as he looked around at the surroundings, then let out a snort. This is even worse than I thought. It was quite the horrifying ritual, Eugene agreed. No, I'm not talking about the ritual, Lovelian clarified as he lifted a finger and pointed at something. It can even be considered fortunate for there to be only one innocent casualty. Lovelian was pointing at the traces of the battle. He looked down at a large hole so deep it looked as if it had pierced all the way into the bedrock. Malkuth also whistled as she took a look around. This is huge. How bad was it that there aren't even any spirits in the ground? Malkuth marveled. How terrible, Atarax growled as he narrowed his eyes and raised a hand. Heat grabbed at the air with his white-gloved fingers and rubbed his fingers together. After doing so, his gloves were instantly dyed black. To think that I would be able to see such vicious, ominous demonic power in a place outside of the Devil Dome, Atarax muttered. 5 days ago it was even worse than it is now. Eugene spoke casually, then flinched and held his cloak open. Without the power of the Holy Sword and Akasha, I also wouldn't have been able to survive. Although he had already received quite a lot of attention, Eugene didn't want to attract even more attention and suspicion from these outsiders. So he took out the Holy Sword and Akasha and showed them to the group. Akasha didn't receive much attention, but everyone's eyes shone as they looked at the Holy Sword that Eugene was holding in his hands. They couldn't help but do so. This holy sword was part of the Great Vermouth's legend and was said to be the legendary sword that had cut down 3 demon kings. After Vermouth had passed, only the Patriarch had been able to carry the holy sword during family ceremonies, and not a single person had been recognized by the holy sword as its master. Whoa, Atarax breathed out in awe as he too looked at the holy sword with admiring eyes. Himoria, who hadn't uttered a single word so far, also stared at the holy sword with alarmed eyes. Atarax muttered, "It's really Altair." "Yes, that's right," Eugene confirmed. "At first I thought that the report was wrong, but to think that a new master of Altair has truly been found." Atarax exclaimed in amazement. Eugene began to say, "My apologies for hiding it." "There's no need for you to say such a thing," Atarax interrupted Eugene with a shake of his head. "There was good reason for you to not be able to announce that you are the master of the Holy Sword. And weren't the Saintess candidate Christina and the Holy See already made aware of your status as the new master of the Holy Sword after all?" Atarax raised his hands. "Himoria. Applause for the master of the Holy Sword," Atarax instructed. Himoria silently raised her hands and began clapping. But the sound of Atarax's clapping was much louder than Himoria's. "Enough," Atarax said as their applause abruptly stopped. "Now then, master of the Holy Sword, please, tell us the story of how you heroically slew the devil who attempted to descend here." "It died because I swung the holy sword at it," Eugene simply explained. Atarax and the others were struck dumb. Well, it also made a caft sound before biting it, Eugene muttered as he walked over to the altar where parts of the magic circle remained.